wondering how I got into this mix.
I'm actually a Republican defector.
What turned you off so much by him?
Actually, ever since I started focusing on 9/11, the questions that kind of followed from that, and the war on terror.
Did that? You think they were behind
I actually don't have any answers. I'm just more inquisitive. I do think that now that 28 pages have just been declassified, that Saudi Arabia had a hand in it. We know that Saudi Arabia is connected with the Bush family as well.
Release those papers,
Trump
right?
talked about that too.
Yeah.
Talked about the 28.
Right? They need to release those things, right?
Well, they just finally did. Well, they were a redacted version of it.
Mr. Obama, the president of transparency, right?
Well, not exactly.
Transparent?
Yeah, I'd say he's one of the most least transparent that we've ever had.
You know?
So can I'm filming this right now. I want to just get this because this is like, this is a pro-Trump supporter, right? You're pro-Trump?
Yeah. I'm a
Okay, and
Republican.
you're a Republican,
So I
so
support our candidate.
and then somebody here that says anti-Trump is pro-love, right? Okay, so let's get your perspective. What is it about Donald Trump that appeals to you, that makes you, besides, okay, you said you're a Republican, is it only that he's the Republican candidate, or like if they had any candidate, would you support him just
I
because
was a Cruz follower at first because I thought he was a proven conservative. Trump's changed some positions over the years. You probably changed some positions. So it's a wait and see with him. But right now, I like he's a straight shooter. He says.
What about his policies? What policies of his do you?
I think he wants to secure the border. I think he wants to check some of these immigrants that are coming in, what their intentions are, whether they're good or bad.
I just have a question for you: is why do you feel so, or why do you think that immigrants are trying to come to the United States in the first place?
Because this is the only country that in one generation you could change your family tree. We don't have a caste system. We don't people. You could, with hard work, education, determination, you can become a corrupt. Come on, But this is,
Have you
and
heard of like NAFTA at all, or
all that stuff,
okay?
bro.
So do you think Mexicans would want to leave their country if they had the opportunities that they had, the same opportunities? I'm pretty sure Mexicans would want to stay in Mexico if they could afford to, but they're looking out for themselves and their family.
NAFTA is bad or good?
I'm saying
'Cause that's
NAFTA.
giving jobs to Mexico because it's cheaper labor.
Not really. It's moving jobs away from Central America and more to the United States. It's giving more power to the United States, and not just the United States, but those who are aligned with NAFTA.
Yeah, I don't like those trade agreements. I don't think they're good for us. I think they should have kept a lot of these middle-class jobs have left, and that's why we're having two classes. We're going to become like all these third-world nations.
Could I ask you about one more of Trump's policies? So one of the things that people have been critical of is his rhetoric towards wanting to profile Muslims, entering the country. Now, what is your position on that? Do you think that's in line with the American Constitution, American values?
Profiling, police, I hate to burst your liberal bubble, but police profile people. That's part of their job, right? Yeah. I think they have FBI profilers, don't they?
But my question is whether or not it's happening doesn't mean that it's moral or just. If just because something's happening.
Wrong. I think it's smart.
But do you think profiling, say, for instance, collectivizing?
They do at Ellis Island.
Let me finish the question, please. Just let me ask the question. Collectivizing a whole group of people who identify as Muslims, So what? Let's rename. What if they said we want to profile? Let me ask the question.
The problem with them talking to you.
You really believe that?
Yeah, I really.
Because one of the things that I would actually side with Trump on is that he does talk about the corruption of the current U.S. government. Are you okay with NSA surveillance? Monitoring every activity that you do. That has happened under the Obama administration.
No, I don't. I think, unless you're...
But some people would say, hey, if you have nothing to hide, what are you worried about, right?
Yeah, no, that's how it gets.
It's
stuff,
So my question is then, if we're going to empower the government, because think about this. Trump generally calls out the power of the government. Look, stay focused for 1 second. Let me just ask you this one question, because this is what I've been asking all Trump supporters, and I'm not a liberal, I'm somewhere in the middle. But if we allow the government to be empowered to say, start profiling all white people, all Mexicans, all whatever it is, Muslims, it doesn't matter. Whatever, they collectivize an entire race or entire religious belief.
Activity, okay?
What he said was to profile, let me check and make sure you fit the right criteria. That's going to empower the government. Do you think the government would release that power? Do you think the government would let go of that power? Do you think the government would let go of that power? Because to me, it feels like a slippery slope to empower the government. We already have a surveillance state. We already have a police state here in the United States. Trump sees that. Your candidate sees that. He's talked about that.
Like left-wing stuff to me.
No, man, I'm more conservative, but I'm also see that there's. I didn't say the police are evil, but there is a police state growing. I didn't say they are right now, but look around the police. Look around the nation. All the local police departments are being militarized. They're being given tanks and all sorts of military equipment. That's coming from the war on terror through the federal government.
Remember that
The
guy in
Department of
LA?
Homeland Security is
Remember
giving them
those
the
guys
grant
in
money.
LA that shot up LA about a decade ago, and they had Kevlar helmets, Kevlar suits on, and they were robbing banks and stuff, and they had a shootout in LA.
Sure, you can get things on the black market.
They were overgunned. You know what? That's part of us having the right to bear arms. You know?
The government, well, the people should have the right to bear arms, but do you really want the government to have more arms than the people?
Yes,
The people. This is still
definitely.
Why is that? I mean, does that make you feel safe?
I don't know.
Actually, yeah, it does make me feel safer that the police can get whatever type of equipment that they want to have to protect us.
What happens if we enact these policies and then, let's say, 20 years from now, we have a real serious threat? Maybe Trump isn't that much of a threat to you, but what if we have something even worse than Trump come and actually follow through on some of these policies, and we have concentration camps, or we have things like that?
You're playing the what-if game. That's very hypothetical. That's very hypothetical.
Hitler was elected in a democratic society, and look what
Now, you
happened.
equate Trump with Hitler. Now, this is a lot of bullshit.
I wanted to hear your definition
Like the
of
Rolling
profiling.
Stone,
though.
we can say bullshit.
I heard you talking
right?
about profiling. Hang on a
This is
minute.
bullshit.
What is your
Donald
definition of
Trump,
profiling?
Hitler, bullshit.
I mean, I want to make a point. I heard your point, but I thought it was interesting.
Okay, so what I would say is,
I work in Afghanistan.
okay,
You know,
so
and I've been there for 5 years.
Okay.
So I'm interested in, I'm really opposed to these Syrians coming over here, and they're unvetted. That's not really profiling anybody. We don't have information.
Okay, so let's not confuse two issues, because that one is immigration of refugees, right? So obviously, if people are coming to the country through a refugee program, I agree that you should probably check them out and make sure they're not connected to some ISIS or whatever. But we also, just side note, we got to acknowledge that the U.S. government helped create, through funding, the Syrian rebels. We've been funding those Syrian
Exactly.
rebels,
I
those
agree
moderates for a long time.
I
So
agree with you
this is
100%.
blowback coming back at us. I'm not saying that we should allow it to happen, but we have to recognize that fact.
No.
Now, as far as, let me jump to what you said about profiling. What I'm referring to is how Trump had at one point said, and I don't want to misquote him, I'm not trying to take him out of context, but he said something along the lines of, we should either stop the immigration of all Muslims or profile them. And to me, that means, okay, you look at an individual, are you a Muslim? And if you're a Muslim, then you have to go through additional screening. And that to me just seems un-American, because should we profile an individual based on their religion, based on their color? But what if they came to you and said, hey, if you were in a different nation and the Christians were the extremists, and all of a sudden they started saying, hey, if you're a Christian, we're going to have to take you to the government building and question your whole family, go through your house. It's just part of the profiling, because we want to make everybody feel safe.
Well, hold on. I believe, this is what Donald Trump was talking about. He was talking specifically about the Syrians coming over here. Those Syrians that are over here, they have no records. We can't go to them and ask them. Like, the U.S. has background, has criminal history checks you can do on people. Well, so does Britain, so does France, so does these other countries. Syrian does not. And you're also talking about a culture, they're brought up to hate Western culture over there. They really are. So you need those people, if we want to help them, I agree they probably need some help. Set them up in another Muslim country that is, they can assimilate into back into their culture there, and not come over here, a culture they've been taught to hate since birth.
But you will acknowledge that there's already Muslims here in America that have been living for quite a while and who don't hate America and who have been getting along peacefully.
A lot of friends that are Muslims.
So then, do you think that everybody that's trying to come here is one of the bad ones?
I've written several letters. I've written several.
Yeah, but it only takes one white person, one black person. It could be anybody.
Exactly. But I don't need.
What if game?
But if we're gonna live our lives in
bringing him
danger,
in there,
why
do you keep bringing him in? If there is the what if, he wants to play the what if. The leaders of the future do this or do that. What
you gotta worry
if
about the power you're giving the federal government and how they're going to use it? Trump may not use it in a dangerous way, but what if somebody...
you're not worried about the power that Hillary Clinton would assume?
Absolutely. I'm not a Hillary Clinton supporter by any means. Trust me. I
I'm
don't
worried
support her.
if we let not only 10,000 but maybe 100,000 Syrians in here. Does that not concern you? I've got kids and family here.
So I do have concerns that people who have been radicalized want to attack the United States.
And you're right.
And
that happens here. It does.
And within and without, okay? So, but I also acknowledge, and this is, again, just a side point, I also acknowledge that the United States has played, since, the Bush administration, even before, we can go further back, the creation of Al-Qaeda, we've been messing around in the Middle East for quite some time,
It's been a disaster.
And, like overthrowing governments, trying to install puppets, and so now we have a generation of people who have been raised, like you said, to hate America, and some would say, well, it's probably because we've been over there messing in their country. Doesn't mean they have should come over here and
let's ask
attack
the
us.
reporter a question.
No,
Do
he's
you
right.
think that? Do you think he is right about that? But do you think that what we've done in the past 50 years has caused Muslims to hate Americans?
As far as like interfering in their nations.
Have you ever heard of the shores of Tripoli? You know a little about the shores of Tripoli. How long ago was that? 200 years ago. Islam has been at war with the Christian world since its inception. Don't blame it on the things in the past 50 years. It doesn't.
I'm not-
It
I'm
doesn't
just-
have any relation to that.
It's not. Hold on.
It's
It's
the Crusades.
let's
Go and
say-
do
Well, I
some
mean,
history. Take a
so well.
history
Let's.
class.
We're talking about profiling. So
Crusades were a response to Muslim
yeah, give me your definition of profiling because you asked me for mine.
Now, a profiling is me looking at a person and making a judgment on that person, you know, without any kind of probable cause or anything, and then, you know, barring him from something or violating his rights. All right, and that, to me, that's profiling.
So looking at somebody, judging them based on no probable cause like that, and then making assumptions and taking them aside, questioning them, detaining them, things like that.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that I believe that all human beings are individuals. I think that you and him are separate individuals. Maybe you may come from the same city. You may, you both like Trump. Maybe you're both Christians, but you're separate. So you have different opinions, different values. So every human to me is an individual, whether they consider themselves a Muslim, an atheist, a Christian. So to me, to just say like, we're going to look at all the Muslim population and scrutinize them a little bit extra to make sure that everybody's safe. I think we should, if anything, and this is not what I'm calling for, there should be either across the board, examining of people, which is basically what they're doing now.
I don't know, but I agree with what you're saying. We shouldn't take all Muslims and say they should all be banned. Donald Trump was talking about the Syrians that are being brought in here by Hillary Clinton and President Obama. That's what he was addressing all this to. Those are people that we can't vet. That's like the Afghans that want to come over here under the special immigrant visa program. They have to go through, it's almost a 2-year vetting process. They get letters, they have to go through interviews, to show that they're not going to be a danger to the citizens over here. To load up an airplane with 10,000 Syrians and fly them over here, to me, is crazy.
So you feel like it's more, what I'm hearing at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're saying it's not necessarily that you're against these people, but that you think that the process they're bringing them in is inadequate.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've got a lot of good friends that are Muslims, and they're not radical. They've helped U.S. forces. I've worked with them overseas. I've lived in Afghanistan for the past 5 years, and I trust my life to some of those people over there that are Muslims, and they are disgusted too about this radical Islamist terrorists.
I think most people would stand against, indiscriminate violence against people who had nothing to do. We can say that for the most part, these different terror attacks, regardless of what caused them or who funded them, which I do think is important, but regardless of those things, most of the people are innocent victims. Now, what I wanted to ask though is, earlier you said something along the lines of Muslims staying in their culture, and I know many people consider this to be a Christian nation, based on the founding of it. But obviously, the population's expanded. There's people of all different beliefs in this nation. Isn't diversity a part of what America is about? Hasn't that always been a sort of foundational block of what we're about?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Muslims that were raised in this country are, they're Americans, and they believe in the freedoms that we have here. But you know what? Somebody from Syria that's raised in a Syrian culture, they don't have the belief system that the average American does. They don't. Non-believers, they believe they should be killed. They believe in Sharia law. They don't believe in the rights and the freedoms that we have in the U.S. So to just bring these people in without them going through any kind of process.
I think that you're making legitimate claims as far as needing to have some sort of I may have different views on the borders, immigration, things like that, but I do think that you're not just saying, hey, I hate Muslims, they're all evil people. So, and this is the reason I wanted to do this, is because a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, they get a caricature version of, they think that you're a fascist because you support Trump. Maybe you think the other side, like you came up here expecting hey, we're liberals or whatever. I'm not, man. I kind of consider myself to be sort of conservative, but when it comes to the police, I definitely see, overstepping of bounds. I have family members who are police though, so I understand that not all cops are bad and not everybody's trying to kill people. So I'm not, just, trying to come from the other side. And I definitely don't support Clinton, but I do see that there's just so much corruption. I really have very little faith of being able to change it by electing a new president, whether that's Trump or Clinton. I just see that you know, in 2012, for example, a lot of people supported Ron Paul and were really excited, thinking that he was going to create something more sort of liberty-based, you know, more about, you know, freedom and also restricting the power of the federal government, you know, because I think we probably could both agree the federal government has grown massively since 9/11. I mean, the NSA surveillance, the expansion. I don't know where you stand on the wars and things like that, but we're, you know, under the Obama administration, we've expanded now. We have conflicts in Somalia and Yemen and, you know, all over the place. And I think this is probably part of the problem, is that the U.S. has this empire spread over the Middle East, and it's kind of feeding into this.
You know what
cycle,
it all goes back to? You know what it all goes back to? It all goes back to the giant military industrial complex, the floors, the KBRs,